so here we go with part 2 of the first chapter. Want to quick tell you, number one, psychology is science, period. In science, we usually want to know big answers. Quick example. I might want to know, what is the opinion in the American people of President Obama? Ideally, what I would do is I would look at 310 million American people. I would find every single one of them. I would ask them. I would average it out, and I would know the answer. However, that just is undoable, right? Because we want to know these big 310 million people. So instead, we'll draw a sample. Let's say we'll draw 100 people, and we'll ask 100 people, what's your opinion of President Obama? And then we'll take the information from those 100, from that sample of 100, and we'll use inferential statistics to try to make a leap about what would be true if it were possible to look at all 310 million. Of course, it's an impossibility, but if it were possible, given what I found in this 100, what would be true of the 310 million? And so this is the basic idea behind psychology, science, and statistics, and the use of statistics. I'll leave it up to your experimental class to fill in the details, in particular things such as, is it a good sample? Is it a representative sample? All of these are definitely experimental questions for you. In psychology, we tend to use a scientific method where we begin making uncontrolled observations. We observe things, and then we generate a theory to help us explain those observations. I saw a couple of things, why it might be. Allows us to generate testable hypotheses. A testable hypothesis is usually in the form of if-then. If something happens, let me just try to give you the rundown on research methodology here in a relatively short note. What we've got is some research is descriptive. Okay, take it back even further. In science, we got to go back to Francis Bacon, the father of science. Okay, Bacon. Had to get that out of my system. Francis Bacon, the father of science, taught that there's only one real goal of science, and that one goal is really to make the world a better place. So let me talk about science. We can talk about descriptive research which is used to describe, surveys and things like this. And it's lovely. Let's say our problem is drug abuse. So we can use surveys and we can find out, the characteristics of a drug abuser. I don't know what they might be. I mean, this is how they look, something like that. We can do correlational research, and we can find characteristics of drug abusers. We can even do long-term studies, and we could say, give some surveys to some kids when they're in middle school, and then later follow up on them and find out which ones have become drug abusers and which ones haven't. And then we might find some characteristics that predict, and then that will allow us in the next generation to say, well, children with these characteristics in middle school are more likely to become drug abusers later in life. Okay, lovely. I can predict who will. I can tell you what a drug abuser looks like with descriptive research. I can predict which children will become drug abusers using correlational research, but ultimately it is only through experimental research that I can establish cause and effect. A causes B. I can figure out what are the causal factors that are leading to drug abuse. Okay. Correlational research is lovely. It allows us to predict, right? Let's say I can predict that children that score higher on the SAT will get better grades in college. It's a general prediction. It's generally true. Lots of exceptions to the rule. There's lots of kids that bomb the SAT but would do perfectly great in college given an opportunity, and some people that slam dunk the SAT and then fail out the first semester. It happens. It happens. But despite these exceptions, it does not change the fact that the general rule can still be true. Those that score higher tend to perform better. Lovely. But it's not cause. Okay? As a very simple example, there's a strong correlation between the number of churches in a city and the amount of violent crime in a city. So, what? Churches cause crime? No. Probably not. I won't even go there. Crime causes churches? I don't know. I guess maybe kind of sort of makes sense. But what makes more sense is the larger the city, the more churches, and the more violent crime. It's a third factor which is driving both. In many cases of correlation, we don't know what it is that's causing. In some cases, we don't care. Okay, if your goal is to just predict, well, who cares why? You just predict. Okay, it's purely a monetary consideration. But as we said, experimental research allows me to establish that thing that is in fact causing. A causes B. And so it comes down to this. If you want to make the world a better place, look at this causal relationship. A causes B. And if B is something you like, then make A happen. A causes B. Okay? And if B is something you don't like, make sure A doesn't happen. Prevent A from occurring, and B will not follow. So it's simply a matter, it is only through this experimental research that we establish cause and effect. And it is only in this way that we can truly make the world a better place. Now, that's not to say that we don't need to use, let's say, the meat and potatoes, what we learn from correlational research, what we learn from descriptive research becomes the building blocks for the experimental research. Okay. I'm going to leave this slide alone, but trust me, this slide is good. It's one, though, that ought to pop up in every class you've taken in anything that relates to science. I know for a fact that I put this same basic slide up in every course I teach because it's relevant to all of them. Theories, hypotheses, you guys can read. Okay, observational research, blah, blah, blah. Correlational research. You guys check it out. Pluses, minuses. This is all review, I'm hoping, right? By this point in your careers. Correlations between height and weight, age and job satisfaction. Yeah. Alright. Experimental research is interesting. In experimental research, we can we can study things cleanly. That is to say, experimental research, usually we control factors. We can make sure that it is in fact A that causes, whatever, boring. We can do experimental research either out in the field somewhere, out in the mall or something, or experimental research in a laboratory. I've seen experimental research at the mall, something like you put a nickel on the floor and you watch groups of people and you find out if there's 4 people, will they grab a nickel? If there's 3 people, will they grab? Which characteristics of which groups will be picking up? And this is a neat thing, but you're not really exactly manipulating anything, right? Yeah, you could manipulate, say, for example, if I put a penny down, will people pick it up? If I put a nickel down, will people? So yes, you can in fact manipulate, in the field. But unfortunately, in field research, there's lots of other factors going on that are uncontrolled, like not just how many people are coming along, but what time of day is it? Is a mall cop around? Are the people in the kiosks looking at them? And all of these things. But in a experiment that you do in a laboratory, you can control all of that. Every single time they go past a nickel, there's always 2 people with them, and there's never a mall cop, and whatever it might want to be. You can control everything. So we can control things to make sure that it is in fact A that's causing me. It is the presence of 2 other people that is causing me picking up the nickel. I don't know, whatever your study is. Okay? But what we find in laboratory experiments is that it becomes very difficult to in laboratory experiments, what happens is people come in and they tend to act like the can do, not like the do. That is to say, they tend to walk in and say, I wonder what this researcher is looking for, and then they proceed to give you what they are capable of. They don't give you what they do in reality. Okay? So we find that experimental research is important, but, ecological validity. Operational definitions, that is to say, I might have a theory that says happiness is related to helpfulness, something like this. This is in fact a true thing. I don't even remember the name of it, but when people are in a good mood, they're more helpful. And it doesn't really matter how come they're in a good mood, they're more helpful. It's just a statement. Oh yeah, the feel good do good phenomenon. I remember that one. But what happens is I might say, you know, A causes B. Uh, Good mood causes helpfulness. In other words, independent variable causes dependent variable. If somebody's in a good mood, then they'll be helpful. Independent, dependent. But unfortunately, what happens is we need to define what do you mean in a good mood? What does that mean? And so maybe we would say, you know, I might operationally define good mood as having just received four candy bars. I don't know. I mean, your experiment. You decide what good mood means. What do you mean by helpful? I don't know. Maybe helping researcher pick up papers that fell in. I don't know. I don't know. It's up to you to define what does happy and helpful mean. That's what an operational definition is all about. Not just A causes B, but how are you going to define those things? All right. Experimental research. You guys read this stuff. I've got 4 minutes tops to. I only got 4 minutes before it is too much. What's all good here? Okay. Ding ding. We're going to stop with that. Make sure that you guys look through this stuff. I mean, I have taught this material so many times it's boring me silly, okay? But if you guys don't know this, you need to know this. There's a reason that this type of material shows up over and over and over and over in every single class you have, and that's simply because it is the most important material you can possibly come across. Okay? So we're going to start in on some actual social psychology starting in the second chapter. But for now, I just want to remind you that one, I like that example so much. If other people are watching, you ain't going to stick your finger up your nose no matter how much it itches. So that is social psychology.